Good afternoon, folks. Thank you for joining us with our Friends with FieldView webinar series. And today we have our friend Traction Ag on the line with us that's going to talk about the connection between Traction Ag and Climate FieldView. Ian, if you wouldn't mind going to the next slide, please. We do have another great program for you today, and we want to cover our legal information first. And so we do conduct these webinars to make sure you're informed about the connections that can be made between our partners and FieldView should you choose to make those connections with your FieldView account. And so we are hosting these webinars for informational purposes only, and Climate LLC has not vetted and does not endorse any claims made by third parties. Next slide, please. We do have a great program, as I mentioned, here with Ian Harley from Traction Ag, and we want to make sure that you ask any questions that you want to pose to Ian while we have him here with us. So you can do that in the chat or in the Q&A. If you don't see the Q&A box on the right-hand side, you may need to use the controls on the bottom of your screen, and you can access the chat or the Q&A there, and you can pose those questions to all panelists, all participants, or just to myself, Mindy McDermott, the host. So without any further ado, I am going to pass things over to Scott Speck. Scott is a Climate Activation Manager for Climate, and he is going to introduce our special guest today and get us kicked off here. Scott, it's all yours.
Sounds good. Well, thank you, Mindy. Hello, everyone. Thanks for joining for our Friends of FieldView series today, featuring Traction Ag. The goal of our Friends of FieldView series is to provide you with some general awareness about the partners who are integrated with FieldView, while also providing insight into their teams, their products, and the solutions that they offer. We are really looking forward to hearing today from our speaker, Ian Harley, who is the CEO of Traction Ag. If you don't know about them, Traction is actually one of our newest FieldView partners and focuses on making farm accounting and agronomy easy. Traction's all-in-one farm management software saves customers time by integrating their accounting, payroll, field operations, and agronomy all into one platform. With farm accounting at the application's core, Traction's operations module integrates with Climate FieldView to deliver seamless automation of field record data, driving clear analysis of field and crop profitability with inventory tracking. As Mindy mentioned, please be sure to ask questions as we go along this afternoon, and we will get to those as we go throughout the presentation. Again, thank you for joining us, and now I'll pass it over to the Traction team to get things kicked off. Ian, it is all yours.
Well, thanks, Scott, and thanks, Mindy, and thanks, everyone, for taking time to join this seminar this afternoon. Certainly want to make it useful for you, so please do ask questions at any time. I can either take them during the presentation, or if there's a suitable moment, or we can aggregate them for the end. So, Traction and Climate FieldView, automate your field records for your operation. Clearly, in order to do successful analysis of your field profit center by field or by crop, to get the key performance indicator of revenue, cost, and margin per bushel or per acre, automating that field record component to get all of that field activity into your accounting application is the goal of this connectivity. It's very important that we can then reconcile that in order that, if the as-applied data totals to a quantity that's not exactly what you used for that individual field or combination of fields, you can correct that because it's dynamically linked to your inventory and it's dynamically linked to your profit center analysis, so you want to get those values correct. And of course, at the other side, when we get those harvest records in, similarly your bushel total, you can reconcile to the actuals that you've possibly weighed on an on-farm scale or a grain cart scale ticket, so that we're reconciling those into Traction. Traction was founded in March 2022. My colleagues from our former time at a company called FarmWorks, Scott Nussbaum and Brian Stark, and we just felt there was no company who were targeting a modern, easy-to-use web application with all of the basic accounting and deliverables of a non-industry application like QuickBooks or Xero, but with all of the farm-specific functionality, dealing with prepaids, dealing with inventory, dealing with the job costing elements that are so critical to farming, which is a complex business for accounting. Often your profitability spans multiple years, you're storing crop, and you want to be able to analyze back to the source of production for individual fields and crops. So we launched our accounting in 2021, and then of course we added that operations to track that activity in April 2021. Where are we heading with Traction? Well, you can see we're very active with our engineering, launching our advanced accounting, which is initially prepays, adding equipment costing, adding landlord share crop management. So again, that's fully integrated with climate, so you can start to populate your landlord share splits or your contract job invoices that you want to do from that climate information. We did launch payroll in January of 2022, and it's a fully automated payroll system, both digitally paying your employees, paying your state and federal taxes, and filing all of your state and federal tax information digitally. Then, of course, we're very pleased to roll out this climate integration. We've done an initial release in February of boundaries for new users to get them started easily with Traction, and in March we will have the full job summary information flowing in. I'm going to jump out to the application here. Just give me a moment. And we're going to start with the Climate FieldView integration. So here you can see in our integrations tab, we use this 9-pin tools menu. I'm going to select my tools, and then I'm going to select integrations. And this is a one-time exercise. So I click on my Climate FieldView option, and it reminds me what we're going to synchronize, so farm, field, and boundaries. And also coming in March, that field record summary import. There are requirements from the Traction side of both the basic operations and the climate connection service. I'm going to hit my connect button. Of course, I put in my standard climate login. Confirms what I'm going to download from the climate perspective. Here's the key. I'm going to select the options that I want to use. So if you have a good set of boundaries, you don't have to import your field boundaries. You can leave those open, but I'm going to select my field boundaries. And again, it's date selective. So if I choose my historical log data, I can go back and select the previous years. If I want to pick up last year's harvest, for example, to populate that in, I'll be able to do that in March. We don't recommend that you go back too far unless you're actually going to reconcile these records and use them in your field profit center analysis. Because we're only pulling in the job summary data, historical records that aren't associated with your job costing or your accounting, you're probably just going to leave in climate and use those effectively in your climate platform. We do give options to only select certain types of data. I honestly think that if you're going to integrate, you're going to select all three pretty much all of the time, and you would hit on save, and that's a one-time connection. Apologize for the pause. I just have the WebEx on where I need to get to. We do account sharing within Traction, so let me just close out of this. I'm going to switch into my demo account. This means you can have a trusted client, trusted advisor relationship either with your accountant or your agronomist, so you can switch. You go into my Traction Success account. Load that up. Traction is very focused on customer service and support. We do that in a number of ways. We have the ability to open your account. You can choose to give Traction support team access to your account. That means we can work directly on your account for you. We do also have a very comprehensive knowledge center, and you can see in addition to being on the climate website, we have a detailed video and article of how to connect your climate account. And we do have this chat facility, so if you have any questions while you're within our application, you can use this chat icon, and it is a person in the USA who will answer your question. Our response time in Eastern Standard Time daily hours is around 5 minutes. We're trying to keep that as quick as possible. And we will create a support ticket for any chat outside of hours, and we can respond to that. Once Once we have your account connected, in March, what we'll do is we will synchronize all of those field activities or field records, field operations into what we describe as an import queue. And again, I was mentioning earlier, this is where it's important. If we already recognize the boundary, then we will mark that appropriately. We are using a CDMS product database within Traction, so if the name matches exactly, we'll immediately recognize that product or tank mix if it exists in Traction. Similarly for equipment. But the purpose of this reconciliation is to pick an individual job or multiple jobs and correct any feature of that job that needs edited based on the actuals that are in use. I'm going to switch over to my field records here. You can see the impact that that has. We create automatically then a series of fully costed field records at the field level using our accounting as the basis for the cost information. What are we driving towards with these field records? Well, of course, we're driving to that field profit center analysis. So where does that appear? If I go to my dashboard, I'm going to change from being my entity analysis of my financial performance to my crop zone analysis. Choose my crop zones, and in this example, I'm going to choose 2021 corn. I can pick an individual field, or I can pick all of my fields. I'm going to create that crop zone analysis. I drill down in my dashboard here, and I'll hide my crop zone so I can see all the detail. This is the key deliverable for Traction. From your true accounting information, you're building out the per acre revenue, the per bushel revenue, all of the products that you've used in your field records, in this case, field records that have been synchronized from climate are identified there, and you can allocate any overhead. So the other example I've got in this particular profit center analysis is crop insurance that I have allocated to all of my corn fields, and it's amortized that on a per acre and a per bushel basis. We can currently print this. We will give it available in a download as an Excel sheet, and also the ability to drill down, as I'll show you in the income statement, so that we can get the background transactions that build this analysis. So we started with the climate integration. We looked at the field records. We saw what the outcome of the field records was, which was that field profit center analysis. Let's get started with Traction. Where do you start with Traction? Well, we have a quick start option. We mentioned entities, so any operation, any entity that you have as part of your farming operation that files a tax return, you can set up within Traction, and that means you can manage bank accounts, chart of accounts, balance sheets, and income statements for each of your individual entities. And this is often the scenario we find amongst growers, is that they have a farm operating entity, which might be a corporation, and they then have either an individual landowning entity or multiple landowning entities. It can be a partnership, and it can be a combination of family members. You could have multiple landowning entities. You might track a trucking entity. You might track a agronomic service entity or seed sales entity, and all of those can be delivered within a single Traction account. There's no limit. We do offer bank connectivity. You don't have to connect your bank. You can edit all of your transactions manually in the accounting side. But if you choose to connect your bank or credit card, we use a third-party company called Plaid. And you simply search for your institution. I've got an example of Chase here. Search for institution in Plaid, and it will appear. Just use your standard login that you use in your online portal. And it's a one-time exercise then to connect your bank. Interesting that Chase has connectivity issues today. It does not. And the third part of our quick setup is that we're using a standardized chart of accounts. And why is this important to you? Well, these account types conform to the FFSC, if you're familiar with it, the Farm Financial Standards Council guidelines, and they also conform to your Schedule F return. So by using these standard account types for our entity, so if I pick my farming entity, for example, I've chosen the standard revenue account types. That means we will build both the Schedule F and also your income statement in an appropriate way for farm analysis. Similarly on the expenses side. The key user interface for accounting is that I just select accounting. It's going to go into my chart of accounts. I'm just going to look at a couple of examples here to see how this works. As I say, you can either have transactions synchronized from your bank. If you click this double arrow, it will sync all your transactions from your bank and you edit, or you can add new. And if you add a new payment, of course, you can print a check. I've got some examples here that I did earlier. The workflow is the same. So if I, for example, purchase some supplies from my local co-op, I'm going to pick the supply option, pick chemicals, and then it will detail out for me specifically what I'm buying, importantly for what crop year, the quantity and the unit cost. So we're maintaining dynamic average costing within that crop year for that product. We'll come back and take a look at products when we get back over to that field operation side. Same idea for my seed purchase there. We have a couple of fairly standard deliverables with regards to being able to tie a PDF to that transaction. One of the areas of functionality that growers have very much enjoyed with Traction is the ability to use it on your phone. So I just hide my chat icon for a moment and I can use a tool to demonstrate that. If I resize this to a phone, when you're heading down to your local John Deere dealership or your Case IH or red, yellow, blue, I guess, dealership, then you can start a transaction whilst you're in the dealership. So if I have picked up parts for, I can just add a payment transaction. I can put in as much information as I want here, but I'm just going to put in the total. And in this case, I'm going to choose the equipment dealer as my example. And then when I click on that camera icon, I can take a picture of the receipt. And of course, being a web application, that's then immediately delivered into my desktop laptop or wherever I had it, log into Traction, and I've started that transaction. I've associated a picture of the receipt with it. So it's very easy if you're working with another individual who's doing your bookkeeping, they can continue that analysis for you. For those of you who use QuickBooks out there, you may be familiar. We use a very similar workflow with regards to bank reconciliation, and I have done this presentation before. It suggests it was too technical, but that is the nature of accounting. You have to get the basics right, and one of the basics, of course, is that reconciliation of your bank balance. And if you're connecting your bank, particularly, that's very easy in Traction because all of your cleared transactions are marked as cleared, and you get a very simple reconciliation. You can view a summary report, you can print, and you can come in and out of this as you need to get that balance correct. So the core accounting functionality is very easy to use. But what's key, of course, is that you're also getting the farm-specific functionality. So if, for example, we're doing a crop sale, I can do an add new deposit, and a little bit like I was doing with my supplies, but somewhat in reverse. I'm going to record a crop sale quickly here. So I'm selling last year's crops. I'm going to pick that up from my storage location. And again, you can see here that we are tracking the inventory, and we're also updating the average unit price for that crop. So this will be correctly reflected in the appropriate fields that have been harvested into that storage location. Any questions or?
Yes, Ian, we do have a question that has come in, so thank you for that time to get this question out. So the question that has been posed, and Scott, you may have to weigh in as well. So this individual indicates that they have better field boundaries and field names in Traction Ag than they do in FieldView, that they need to clean up their field names and boundaries and climate. Is it better to link the two platforms, or is it better to start over with climate? What's the best practice that you could recommend in this situation?
I don't know if you want to start, Scott, or me, but from our perspective today, currently we are pulling boundaries from climate. So if your climate boundaries are better than you have currently in Traction, you can delete your boundaries in Traction, use that climate connection, and it will recreate those boundaries for you. We do not have the ability to push corrected boundaries in Traction back up to climate currently. It's a one-way pull for boundaries.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. I'd say making sure your boundaries are cleaned up in your FieldView account is definitely the key. I think for especially the integration here, but also if you're doing anything else inside of FieldView, such as prescriptions or even just looking at your imagery, having those clean boundaries is going to be key. And like Ian said, once those are clean inside of FieldView, those will integrate over to Traction if you're utilizing their software as well.
Thank you, gentlemen.
So just continuing through the theme of the value of the integration, if I go over to my field ops again, and we mentioned two key deliverables, the profit center analysis, that per acre per bushel. The other key thing for me is that we're maintaining your inventory balance dynamically. So when you reconcile those downloaded climate job summaries, it immediately impacts your inventory, and you can see that being detailed out here. And of course, it's crop year specific, so I'm just going to go back. I'm going to pick out, and you can see then all the entry types. Let's just jump over to seed because I picked that product records for, so I'm going to go back and pick that as grow seed for 2021. We see both the purchase of the seed creating that average unit cost, and then all of the synchronized field records that have depleted that inventory balance. So we're maintaining that current balance of inventory and the average cost. Somebody asked me on an earlier demo today, is it easy simply to wait till the end of the season and aggregate all of the fields we've used that particular seed type on and make sure we get our inventory balance back to zero? Absolutely, if that's your workflow that's appropriate for you. We have just added equipment costing to Traction, so currently we can enter all of our equipment with standard costs, and what we have added is the ability to allocate parts and equipment and service repair bills to those equipments, and again, a little bit like maintaining a dynamic inventory unit cost, we'll also be appropriately amortizing that equipment cost. So as an example here, I've got a situation where I have a repair expense, so I've chosen my equipment dealer and the date, and I'm allocating it to the expense portion of my income statement, but I'm also allocating it to the specific piece of equipment. And there's multiple ways we can do this. We can choose an individual piece of equipment, so it's a specific repair for that harvester, great. If it's an overhead like insurance that applies to multiple pieces, we can do that. Or even if it's a large repair where we're rebuilding a planter, for example, we can allocate that across multiple crop years so that you amortize that expense across multiple crop years. We're also going to build for our next release market value depreciation, so we'll be able to enter the initial purchase cost, let's say $250,000, and on a market value basis, we can dynamically predict the resale value in, let's say, 5 years' time, and again, it will amortize that depreciation, that market value depreciation across the use of that piece of equipment for you. The other core deliverables that I'd just like to mention as we work through this, and I'll switch back up to my entity here, and this is a key piece for me, the reason why we manage multiple entities in the way we do. Here you can see I can run a balance sheet just for my farm, and of course that gives me my asset and liability position specifically for the farm, which is helpful for my accounting or my own analysis. But often if you're a banker, he wants to see an aggregated view of all of your assets and liabilities. And we can very quickly deliver that in Traction by selecting both my farm operating entity and also my landowning entity, so we get a true understanding of our net equity position. Another area that's farm specific and very valuable in Traction, if I go to accounting and I go to my chart of accounts, I can track all of my notes payable, and not only do I track the note payable, but if I go down and set up my note payable in as a long term, we're also tracking all of the amortization of that note payable. That's where we set that up here. So we have the original amount, the interest rate, and it will build for us that calculated payment that we saw when we were processing the payment transaction. So nobody's favorite topic, accounting. Let's jump over to something more interesting, which is the agronomy side. So what's our goal with agronomy? Well, our goal is to make the sample data collection and the nutrient analysis very easy and seamless, the workflow associated with Traction and its partner Field app, in order that you can process all of your nutrient analysis and potentially in the future upload that to Climate. This isn't a deliverable that we have in March, but the ability to process that nutrient analysis to Climate. So you can build sample events, you can build both target points or target zones, and I can just see a couple of examples here. And once you build out those target sample events, they will sync directly with the Field app. You go and collect the samples, and then you print out a lab check-in sheet. And if this is terminology that's unfamiliar to you, there's a standard process amongst multiple labs who use a format called MODIS. And if your lab is supported and they're all listed on the Traction website, then you can simply print that lab check-in sheet, physically hand the samples and the lab check-in sheet to your lab. And we use this event ID. So depending upon the workflow and the timing of that deliverable, 3 to 4 or a week later, you will then have all of your nutrient analysis results auto-populated into Traction for you. And here's an example of some point-based data, and I'm using pH as that. And you can share that, again, with any third-party advisor that's helping you with your nutrient analysis, or you can create your own recommendation. So I can use a new recommendation set here. In this example, I'm using a local lab to me, A&L Great Lakes. Depending on which lab you've partnered with, you'll get a different equation set that you can work with. And they'll pick up one of their standard equations and build out that recommendation. And again, a future deliverable when we see that recommendation would be to push that up to the Climate platform, potentially for use by third parties or to use that. We do have the ability to make adjustments and also make min-maxes on each of the individual products as part of that recommendation process. But when we're happy with the recommendation we've got, pardon me, just next. Pick the products. Again, the products are tied to our product database from our operations side. Wrong, but just jump back in and get that recommendation. Currently today, once we have that layer, we can export out to an industry standard shapefile format, either as an individual file or with all the products in it, or distinct shapefiles for each individual product. And again, we can quickly share by email or with our partners who are doing that application for us. We do maintain the equation sets for those recommendations centrally, but if you do have any custom equations that you want built for your farm, we can do that for you too as part of the process. And as we saw on the terms of lab support, it's either here or on our website. You can see the different labs that are dynamically supported by Traction today. If your lab's not listed here, please feel free to reach out to Traction and we can endeavor to add that lab to the list of supported labs for Traction.
While you're here, Ian, if you don't mind if I ask another question.
Go ahead.
So you showed the field maps and with soil examples. And so the question then is that do other field maps show up in Traction or do they generally stay in FieldView?
No, our goal is not to deliver a full precision agronomy data science solution. That's certainly the goal of FieldView. We are focusing on a certain workflow component, which is the soil nutrient analysis and the ability to collect those soil samples physically, have a great relationship with your lab that makes the processing of the nutrient analysis into the layer very easy, and deliver that layer into a third-party data science application.
Excellent, thank you.
Same idea with the zones. We're just sampling by zone instead of sampling by grid. So our goal here would be to create the zones potentially for the sampling, make the sampling and the functionality associated with that very straightforward and easy, and then potentially generate the prescription map or present those nutrient analysis results back to Climate for prescription generation within the Climate platform. Since I'm running ahead of my 1 hour time slot, would certainly welcome any additional questions or features that you want covered in this.
No other questions at this point, Ian, unless Scott has anything that he wants to chime in here for as well.
Yeah, Ian, one I know that comes up even with us at FieldView, I'm just curious to know what sets Traction apart from some of the other companies that work in financials or agronomy. What's really your key set of deliverables that you guys focus on?
Well, you know, Scott, every grower has to submit a tax return ultimately, and they require but one of the options to prepare that tax return is obviously using a web-based or a desktop installed software product that's focused on delivering a tax return, and QuickBooks is very prevalent in North America for preparing that tax return. So the unique deliverable of Traction is that we do that part of your farm management. We deliver that income statement and balance sheet based on true accounting records, but that we are fully integrated and using that information within our operations. So there is no double entry. You don't have to use two products or two solutions, as it were, to prepare your tax return and understand how much expense you have associated with seed, chemical, and fertilizer, and then in a separate product, rekey that information in order to manage your operations. It's a fully integrated solution between the accounting and the operations. So we use the true accounting information to build out that field profit center analysis at the acre and bushel level. We're also unique in having the multiple applications in order that your payroll, which is an important part of your farm management, if you're an organization that has employees, and we're integrating that payroll functionality again into your accounting capability.
Excellent. Thank you, Ian. We do have more questions that are coming in now, so folks, keep those questions coming in. This is great. Ian, do you want me to ask those now, or do you want me to wait a moment?
We'd love you to ask them, Mindy.
Perfect. Okay. So the question is, can you break out field by field profitability or only total farm profitability?
Nope. Great question, and we certainly field by field. So if I go back to my dashboard here, it's really just a question of what you select when you're getting your field profit center zones. So if I pick my crop zone details as my report, and I'm going to pick that option to select. So here I've got 2021 if I want to do it for this year. I won't, of course, have as much data in for that. So I'm picking my corn for 2022. And then if I just want an individual field, I'm just going to pick that individual field and apply it. And I will then get that profit center analysis for that specific field. I do that again for 2021. We can see a little bit more data in there. There's a graphical representation, and then when I drill down on that graphical representation, I get the more traditional reporting capability. Hopefully that answered your question.
This is great functionality, Ian. Additionally, can accounting data from other softwares be imported into the Traction platform?
No, as I mentioned before, we are very focused on customer success, and we've approached that in a number of different ways. So if you're using a third-party accounting application today, some products have the ability to send us a backup of that, and our customer success team will then process that into Traction so we can set up, well, of course, with climate, we get your field boundaries from climate, but your grower farm field boundaries, which is a key requirement, set up your chart of accounts, set up some of your contacts. We can work on, for example, long-term notes payable and have those set up for you within Traction, with your permission, of course, and it means it's an easy transition. If you're using an online application, some growers have chosen to give us trusted advisor access to their account so that we can log into a different online accounting application and again, reprocess the data into Traction so that you get a good start. It is a manual exercise. We did look at automating some of that, but I guess there was two considerations. One, the engineering deliverable. We felt it was better to work on functionality than work on that data transition component, and also, you know, having an experienced Traction customer success team, as it were, filter or eyeball the information so that we're processing appropriately into Traction, we felt was a better strategy. And that's all part of the service that comes with Traction.
Excellent. Can you also talk about, actually this question I should pose to Scott. Can you talk about the payment and cost of both Traction and Climate? If you have Traction and you want to utilize Climate, Scott, what's that cost? And then Ian, will go to you for the flip of that. If you have Climate and you want to add Traction, what's the cost of that? So go ahead, Scott.
Sure, absolutely. Yeah, so if you've got Traction and you're looking at FieldView to be able to automate and help integrate some of these field records, the cost of FieldView for our Plus subscription, so anybody can create a free FieldView Prime account, and then in order to collect and stream data through FieldView, you would need what's called a FieldView Plus account. And you can find that at climate.com, but the cost of a FieldView Plus account is $99 per year for the subscription. And then you can also qualify for a free year for FieldView through our Bayer Plus program. So the details about that are listed on the climate.com site under pricing. As long as you've got a FieldView Plus subscription and you're collecting or uploading any data from your equipment, there is no additional cost to connect to any of our partners, and that's Traction included. So there's no additional fee to connect to a partner and send that data over that you've collected inside of your FieldView account. The big key here is that you guys as customers are in control of what data you want to share. So just as Ian showed there on that first page of integration, in order for any data to be shared out of your FieldView account, you have to acknowledge that, sign in, and accept those permissions. So no data shared without your consent. You're in the driver's seat of managing that data. And the only thing that you would need for our partnership, such as our partnership with Traction, is a FieldView Plus account.
Great answer, Scott. And I will add to that that Climate have done an excellent job of brand agnostic compatibility, to use that terminology. So regardless of your equipment color or your display type. There's a huge range of support within Climate, and that gives you a great opportunity as a Traction customer to aggregate data from a number of different sources using that Climate account. From our perspective, the cost, if you're an existing Traction customer of basic operations, is an additional $350 per year to connect that Climate account.
Excellent, thank you. Another question that we have is related to fertility scripts. So do we have the ability to write fertility scripts in Traction, or should we write fertility scripts in FieldView and upload them to Traction?
Yeah, today we're currently focused on existing fertility scripts from our lab partners, and that was part of the requirement to get that digital integration with labs as they wanted to present their particular fertility scripts. You know, we're not in the fertility business, so we partner with the labs or we partner with Climate, and really you have that platform choice to make. You can simply deliver the nutrient analysis results. Well, in the future, you will deliver the nutrient analysis results into Climate and use the scripting tools that are available there.
Scott, do you want to weigh in on fertility scripting from FieldView?
Yeah, absolutely. So anyone that does have a FieldView Plus account does have access to our scripting tools. So if you go into your FieldView account, there's a tab that's called Prescriptions on climate.com, and you have the ability to create fertility, seeding, and crop protection scripts. So you have a lot of functionality and a lot of choices there of how you want to create that prescription. You can pull up background maps such as the soil test data. You can pull up your yield data, hybrid information, whatever information that you'd like to create that prescription, you can create, and then the export options inside of FieldView are based on the monitor that you will export to. So you don't have to worry about different file types. You're able to download the prescription based on the monitor that you're going to upload it into. So a lot of flexibility inside of FieldView when you're looking at those prescriptions. And like I said, that is included with a FieldView Plus subscription.
Do fertility scripts that are created in FieldView sync over to Traction?
Not currently.
Perfect, thank you. Okay, I'm gonna group the next two questions because they're all about support and getting started with FieldView and Traction. So first off, just a comment that they're probably going to need some help getting started, getting all the equipment set up with iPads, entered into FieldView, and then set up with Traction Ag. And they would like to do that before the busy season starts. And then also, folks will obviously have more questions whenever they actually start using the program. So if you could both highlight your support resources and folks that can help individuals get started using Traction as well as FieldView. So Ian, we'll start with you on this one.
Yeah, I mean, the process we recommend for anyone who wants to start with Traction, just go to our marketing website, and there is a start trial option here. If you start a trial, there's no commitment or cost to that. You get 30 days, it's full functionality, all of the data within the trial, of course, you own and control. If you choose not to proceed with Traction, we can delete that on request for you. But if you do proceed, during that 30-day trial, you get full access to our customer success team. So as I showed you earlier with regards to the Knowledge Center or the chat functionality, use that along with calling us, of course, on our 1888 number, which you can see here is option 2 for our customer success team. And we will step you through using screen sharing capability like that. We happen to use a Google platform, so we can do online training, we can do online support. As I think I mentioned earlier, you can give us access to your Traction account, so we can actually help you set up directly within your Traction organization. And all of that, there's no commitment or charge for during that 30-day trial period, so you can make sure that everything's working within your organization. Now, we don't sell or support hardware. Scott might comment more on the ideal hardware requirements, but certainly any tablet with a web browser will effectively run the Traction web application effectively.
Yeah, that's great, Ian. And I can touch a little bit on the FieldView side. So if you're interested in getting started with FieldView, my recommendation would be to also go to our website at climate.com. and you'll see there's a couple different options there. We have a 1-888 number that you can give a call to our support team, and we can actually connect you directly with someone local in your area on our climate activation team. So we do have teams of folks out there in the countryside that are working directly with our customers, directly with our dealers to help get set up with FieldView, whether you're just getting started or you've used FieldView in the past and need help uploading maybe some historical data into your account that you would like to send over to Traction. We can help from start to finish on that side. So my recommendation for really getting started on FieldView is to get in contact with our support team, and they can connect you to one of our local field personnel on our activation team, and then we can take it from there. There's a lot of things that we can do to get you started, whether that's just getting created with an account or it's looking at equipment to see if you're compatible to even stream with our FieldView Drive device as well. We can also, like I mentioned, upload any of that historical data into your account if you're just getting started with FieldView. So lots of flexibility there, but my recommendation would be contact our support team, and we can get in contact with you at a local level.
Excellent. Thank you both. No more questions that are pending right now. Folks, if you have other questions, now's your time to get those in. Ian, I'll toss things back to you to continue with your presentation.
Yeah, at a high level, we have certainly covered the core components of Traction. Talk a little bit about, we looked at product inventory, and if you remember, I just selected the product and I can drill down on that inventory history. It's the same concept for our harvested crop storage. So again, we would take those queued jobs that we've synchronized from our climate account, we'd reconcile those to actuals. That would populate the field record. As I think I demonstrated the sale of that harvested material, we can see where that comes from and that we're storing that in our chosen storage location. So when we reconcile, we're allocating those field records into that bin, and it's creating for us then the inventory balance from the synchronized field records. So that's what drives the link to the accounting side, so that when I receive that grain check, we can sell that harvested inventory directly from our cash accounting.
Ian, we do have a question here asking if you could walk through how payroll works more in depth. How is all of this information documented into individual field costs?
Yeah, so we currently, we're stepping through the process. Supplies, obviously, we're taking that dynamic average cost. For equipment, we're taking an amortized combination of market value, depreciation, service and repairs, parts that you allocate to a piece of equipment, and allocating it across the use of that piece of equipment for the year. It's our goal also to similarly link, I think if I understand the question correctly, to similarly link payroll such that if we process payroll in Traction, it then builds the true cost of each employee within your organization into your field record. Today, those two are not linked. So if you want a more expansive demo of payroll, the way we handle that is a little bit different from our other functionality. Contact our customer success team, book a specific payroll onboarding session, whether you're an existing Traction customer or you want to get started with Traction payroll. And we will then walk through setting up your organization with all of the federal and state tax detail you need, your employees, again, with all the federal and state tax deduction information, et cetera, that's tied to them with their bank accounts. And once that's done once, and that's a one-time exercise, then you simply go into current payroll for each pay period and enter for that specific entity the hours, the overtime hours, any deductions, any bonuses that are associated with those individual employees, and it processes that payroll As I say, it's a full digital solution, so it will deduct from your bank account both the payroll values and the taxation values, and it will pay those to your employees and to the relevant state and federal tax agencies. Because of the live nature of it is something we probably need a better demo environment for me. It's hard to step through the specific screenshots in a demo environment. I can only recommend you book a payroll onboarding session with Traction.
Perfect, thank you. Did you have other slides that you were needing to cover, Ian? I'm not sure if you covered everything in your
just got a couple of slides to wrap up if we're done with the demo. Just
okay.
So yeah, just a couple of examples. Ken Hartman, a grower, 3,000 acres in Waterloo, Illinois. And he's one of the classic grower profiles with regards to this integration. Used FarmWorks in the past very comprehensively, and got a lot of assistance from his team, of course, in processing that data in order that he could do that field profit center analysis. But he was a big proponent of this integration for us, because he wanted to automate all those records. He does have a mixed fleet, Ag Leader case, and I believe some John Deere equipment, and all of that data is uploaded to Climate. So his key value proposition is that integration of all that Climate field operation data into his accounting in order to drive that field profitability, and just a huge time saver for Ken. Lindsay Meir, similarly, profile of operation over in Brookville, Ohio, and again, very active users of Climate, but they were most interested in the fact that they were dynamically maintaining those real-time inventory balances using the integrated field records, depleting that inventory value after the reconciliation. So they're constantly aware of their inventory balances of seed, chemical, and fertilizer, and of course, from the harvested crop of the yield job that's coming from that Climate integration. So yeah, really, that was just my summary slide. What we're doing today is synchronizing the field grower farm field names and boundaries, and in March we'll deliver that field summary data captured dynamically from Climate into Traction. I think we're getting near our time, so I'll hand over to Scott.
Yeah, thanks, Ian.
Yeah,
thanks
actually,
for presenting. I think that, oh, go ahead, Mindy.
Well, I'm going to grab the screen here from you, Ian, and throw in a couple of slides here that Scott wasn't aware of. So give me just a second to switch up. And what I'm going to cover is, first of all, how to get CCA credits for attending this session. So that will be of interest to folks, because that's something that is fairly new that we are offering. So first off, if you are interested in CCA credits, we hope that you can see the screen, and you can simply use your phone to scan the QR code. We will need your name, your CCA number, and email, and then we also have a couple questions to ask you related to this training and how we can make other trainings more beneficial for you. But this is one of the first times that we've offered being able to get CCA credits on a webinar. So we hope that you enjoy that. And then the other thing that I want to make sure that we cover is that third-party sharing permissions in FieldView never happen without your consent, without your deliberate button pushing within FieldView. And so we do that to bring additional value to you through the FieldView platform, but we don't do that without your consent unless you choose to share or link your account. So you are in the driver's seat related to your data. So with that, Scott, I will pass it to you now for our closing.
Yeah, sounds great. Thanks, Mindy, and thank you, Ian, for presenting. I think that was a great explanation and demo for us today. If you're interested, you can find more about Traction on our climate.com partners page, as well as some insight into the integration guide and how to connect your accounts. As always, if there's anything that we can help with on FieldView, please reach out to your local Climate FieldView team or our support team. You can also find and register for our future webinars at climate.com/events, as we have some upcoming Friends with FieldView sessions with other partners, as well as some upcoming variable rate prescription tutorials with FieldView in the next couple weeks. Thank you again for joining us this afternoon, and we hope you have a great rest of the week. That's awesome about the CCA credits, Mindy.
Oh, thank you. I was trying to ask one more question there, but I didn't catch Ian before we got off the line. So yeah, that's okay. But yeah, we've had the ability to get CCA credits, but I haven't offered it on our webinars, and so I figured it out, and so we're going to do it. So I'm going to roll it out to the CAMs as well, that folks will be able to, if you want to do this for your trainings, like the training that you did today, we're going to add it to the registration for
Awesome.
for that evaluation at the end, you know.
Yeah, I need to email Tiffany and get some for the last few we've done. I'm running low on precision credits, so I need to do that myself.
Well, so any of those that you have done from like the Bear Crop Science side, you can send her your CCA number and tell her which ones you've registered for. I think she would help you with it.
Awesome. Yeah, I think I'm like 7 or 8 shy or something like that, so that would be perfect. Should get me pretty close.
Yeah, all of the Friends with FieldView sessions are registered. You just need to let her know which ones you've done.
Perfect. That's awesome.
And then folks can go back and watch the recordings too. So like if you needed to watch a recording and then let her know when you watched the recording, that counts as well.
Oh, I didn't know that. That's even better.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Cool.
So,
anything else today? I think that was good.
I don't think so. Yeah. We did meet with CHS. I know you had let Seth know that you wouldn't be able to make it to that one. So there's some other things I think that Seth's going to reach out to you on that, but I think they're interested.
Cool. Yeah, that'll be great. We need to do some more of those with those type of partners, and just internally just get more awareness on them. So that's awesome.
Absolutely. Okay. Well, stay safe.
All right. Thanks for all the help. I appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you. Take care.
We'll see ya.
Bye.